Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to the first hearing of the year for the Senate Committee on Finance for Thursday, January 4th, 2024. Alex, if we could please call the roll.
Senator Paul.
Here.
Senator Murray.
Present.
Senator Fleck.
Present.
Senator Costa.
Present.
Senator Rudolph. Present. Senator Connell.
Here.
Senator Chacon. Senator Paolino.
Here.
Senator Sadowski. Here. Senator Sturgis. Here.
Thank you, Alex. And I know the majority leader will be joining us shortly. We have one item on the agenda for tonight, the schedule for advice and consent, the appointment of Neil D. Steinberg as chair of the Life Science Hub of Rhode Island for a term expiring January 1st, 2028. Neil, would you like to come up? And everyone should have a packet provided by the clerk regarding the appointment. Neil, whenever you're ready.
Is this on? Yeah, thank you, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Finance Committee. I very much appreciate the opportunity and your consideration for the advice and consent based on the legislation that was passed in June to create the Rhode Island Life Science Hub. The funding is $45 million, as you may know. It is ARPA, State Financial Recovery Funds dollars, which is significant because it's outside of just the budget. We can use this money over 3 years per the requirements from the ARPA funding. I do believe that I can fulfill the requirements of the chair as detailed in the legislation, calling for an individual who served in the capacity as a senior executive with extensive background in the banking, grant making, and fundraising fields, all of which I've had experience in, to lead this initiative. It's a quasi-public board that we're establishing. It's a startup, basically. And I will diligently, enthusiastically, and with much transparency try and provide the leadership. The board is being formed as we speak. Half of it was designated in the bill. As you can see, if you've seen it, a 15-member board. We're scheduling a meeting for later in January. We have 4 priorities, again, spelled out in the legislation. One is to establish the entity, which means we're building an organization. We will hire a CEO for this organization. We will do a national search. And again, as designated in the bill, that CEO position is also subject to advice and consent of this body. And so we will hopefully be back with somebody fantastic to run it. We need to work on workforce development and make sure that we have a very diverse, inclusive, and wide range support. This is not all PhDs and doctors doing this. This is lab assistants and technicians. It's not just pharma, it's medical devices. It's a very broad range that's defined in there. The third priority will be some type of investment fund that's called for, and whether this is a venture fund, it's a grant fund, it's incentives or tax credits, we don't know yet, but it will be there to help grow the industry here. And then the last that I'll mention, but certainly very important, is we need to build incubators with wet labs. So you hear about wet labs for this industry. We don't have any commercial wet labs right now. We have them at the universities and the hospitals, but if any of the 3 of us today had a new company in the life science biotech field and we needed wet labs, they do not exist here commercially in the state. So that's another area we will work with developers in places like the new state lab building that's being built as we speak. So I thank you for your consideration, and we'll do the best job I can possibly do in leading the board and taking this forward. The other thing, I just want to make the point, and maybe it's an obvious one, but this is not an expense item. This is an investment. This is not an industry that you grow in 6 months. We're not going to have a new piece of software to go public with. This is an investment over time. Boston and Cambridge loom very large. We're not going to be Boston and Cambridge. They won the Olympics. We're trying to qualify. But the second largest hub for life sciences biotech in New England is Worcester. And we should be able to compete. You go down to New Haven, you see big buildings with the universities and with industry down there. So this is Build It. This is new. There's a lot of seeds already planted in this industry. This will be an umbrella organization. We will be very, as I said, inclusive in bringing people under the tent and build a big tent. Thank you.
Neil, thank you very much. Questions, comments for Neil? Senator, if you like.
Thank you very much, Neil. Obviously, when we look through the pamphlet here, we see the outstanding accomplishments and credentials that you have for this particular position. One of the things that kind of struck my interest is when you talked about workforce development. And how do we integrate that, or how are individuals going to be professionally managed in terms of being able to occupy these types of positions? I know that you speak about potentially presidents of various universities and colleges in Rhode Island being on the board, but how do we integrate the spectrum of workforce that we're going to need for this particular endeavor?
Yeah, it's a great question, very important one. So it's at all levels. It starts with the industry. We need the companies at the table telling us what they need. We need to start it back in the K through 12 system. Just out of coincidence today, I had the opportunity to tour a program I never knew about until a few weeks ago at Juanita Sanchez High School in Providence. And it has a career, I thought they were after me. It has a career in tech program in life sciences and biotech over at Juanita Sanchez. And they have 200 kids taking courses that will prepare them to be lab technicians, to maybe go to medical school or to the School of Public Health. And so we need to do it at all levels. We need to do it with CCRI and Rhode Island College. We need to do it with Skills for Rhode Island Future. We have RI Bio, that is the industry association, and they're doing boot camps. They did one last summer to get people involved. So it's at all levels, but the key is to engage the business partners and the entities and the companies that are going to hire people. They have a need, they have a commitment to hiring. We need to have the people here. So it's going to be a broad spectrum of people working on this.
Yeah, because obviously we need our colleges, but also we need our high schools.
Right.
Whether that be a pathway program or whether it be a CTE type program that facilitates the demand for this particular type of industry.
Right. Yeah, this is a forward-looking industry. This is not trying to retool for jewelry or textiles and hang on too long. We've got catch up to do, but we've got a lot ahead of us that we can do, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Neil, welcome, and I'm really happy to see you be nominated today. Not only, I think I'm biased, not only you are a Pawtucket resident, but you have a great resume. And I think that one of the things that you have spoken about in your previous role as the CEO of the foundation was that an investment in education is an investment in the economic issues of our state.
Right.
And this really resonates, that is really part of what you've been talking about for a long time. So I'm really excited to see you lead this life science hub in Rhode Island. But I wanted to just ask you a question that obviously I ask most of the people that come into the Finance Committee, and as being a chair of education, I know the chairman hears me all the time asking about how are we making sure that you see the direction of this board with lens of equity throughout the whole states, because these technical programs tends to be to more wealth districts where they do have the access to. Yeah. And for me, I think that every student should have the opportunity, and if we really think about the economic stability of Rhode Island in the future, we need to invest in all students that have access to it. So my question is, how are you ensuring that equity lens will be looked at through your leadership in this board?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so, you do it by doing it. And I look at Massachusetts, and they struggle with the same thing. You know, they're looking at, they have programs where they've gone into schools, they've gone into different geographic locations, they're trying to diversify the workforce, and then you go and you see what you see, and that's what it is. What was exciting to me when I went to the Juanita Sanchez, not only was it obviously, I should say obviously, but it's Providence, so most of the kids were kids of color, but it was the relevance, Senator. So when we talk about kids who can't get up to grade level in reading, they can't do the math, you can't do the programs they're doing without doing it. And so they were seeing tangible applications of measuring in a test tube, of doing a pipette, of looking at hair under the microscope. These are all things I saw this afternoon, of reading about the process for what they were doing. So I think this, as with many other things, we need practical applications to this. Just telling kids they need to read and do math is correct, but they need to see the relevance and the practical application, and shame on us if we can't show them that every day. So I think we just need to be deliberate with it. You know, we need to deliberate with the colleges, universities, with the companies, but that's the future of the workforce. You know, the demographics. If we don't pay attention, then we will not have a workforce in 10 years.
And Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, I wouldn't agree with you more. I think that hands-on programs really actually translate to more involvement, understanding, and quite honest, future career choices for these type of students. So that is certainly something that I'm looking forward to collaborate with you in my role as the chair of the Senate Education Committee. And I welcome communication, and like you always work through a transparent way, but I welcome that we work together through, like you said, K to 12, but also post-secondary education. I think it's important that we have a holistic approach, and I welcome that type of collaboration.
We need to do a better job of knowing what's going on. So I heard about this program because somebody called me. I asked somebody at RIDE about it, and they said, well, didn't you know about it? I said, how am I supposed to know about it? I said, it's on our website. I mean, who goes to websites all day? You know, you go when you have a reason to go. We need to be much more proactive, and as I said, build a big tent so that people know there's a program here and there's a company here, and tie our little state together instead of the provincial.
Thank you. Lastly, you have great letters of recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions, comments from Senator Zerrier?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Neil, for stepping up. You certainly could have chosen to become a private citizen and just...
I tried.
And my guess is you have a pretty good idea of what you need to accomplish over the next year to get this started. You have a 4-year term. What is it that you hope will have been accomplished by the end of that term that made it worth your while to come do this?
Yeah, to not be as old as I know I'm going to be when I add 4 years. So I think that you know, as I said, this is an investment over time. And one of the benchmarks of success, honestly, and I don't say this flippantly, is that we will be back here in 2 years asking for more money. If at the end of 3 years we still have $45 million sitting there, we didn't do it. We didn't invest, we didn't build, we didn't do the things we need to do. So I think we need to establish Rhode Island. We have the esteemed Dean of the Medical School here with us for the areas where we have expertise. Where does Rhode Island shine? What are those segments? Is it medical devices? Is it RNA? I'm going to steal some of my academic thunder over there. You know, where are the areas? So establish where we have pockets of excellence in areas of expertise. Get a really running start on that workforce development all the way up from K through 12. We want people doing internships and being in these companies and doing things. And then, you know, what's the benchmark of success? The classic one is jobs and numbers of companies. It's not as easy as that. So 5 of us could start a company today, in 2 years have 6 employees, and be a spectacular success with some type of technology or something. That's not a huge number. On the other hand, we could also be the 3rd manufacturing facility for a company headquartered somewhere else that employs 150 or 200 people. It's not all, I think we need to spread it throughout the state, so that's another thing I would want to accomplish. It's not all the jewelry district, right? Our biggest company in this sector is Amgen. Amgen is West Warwick, Rhode Island. I remember when Amgen came here, they came to West Warwick because they needed water and land to do manufacturing. So yes, we have the research capacity and the knowledge down in the jewelry district, but to grow companies, we've got to be successful down at URI, down in Newport. We've got to build the bridges with Providence and make it a small state. So I would say on the road to jobs and company creation, ecosystem and kind of I was going to say the DNA, I don't know if that's, of this, where there's a culture of entrepreneurship, where people are here, there's more investment in the state. We need more outside investment. We can't do it with this $45 million. We need to get more either federal or private investment to come into this state. This entity, as a quasi-public, will have bonding authority. You just wouldn't buy the bonds right now because there's no assets or income, but down the road, making this a robust organization and seeing the hub of activity so that the real answer is, I would hope in less than 4 years, you wouldn't have to ask the question. It would be enough out there and you'd see what's going on. But we need to bring everybody under the tent for this. So I don't know if that answers.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions, comments for Neil? So Neil, I have a few. We're fortunate. I want to thank the governor and especially Craig for the work that he's done with bringing your name forward. I think then we probably couldn't find another person that meets the criteria in the legislation, but in some regards, that's good, I'll say, because we're fortunate that you said yes, categorically. Your track record at Fleet or Bank of America, at Brown, clearly at the Rhode Island Foundation is paramount and needed for what we need to grow, well, not grow, begin, germinate, right? We need the seed planted, we need the germination to occur, and then we need the seed to flourish and grow to more propagation, as you said earlier, with regards to, you're right, a company with 6 employees is okay. Somebody with 150 or 200, now we're really talking, talking real money there, right? But and at the end of the day, the life sciences, biosciences area is a critical for the country, for the state, for the country, for the world, the ability to do that. And as you indicated, Amgen being right down the road is here in Rhode Island. We need more of them. So I want to thank you for saying yes.
Thank you.
Phenomenal resume that you have here. For the folks watching, obviously for the committee here, many letters of support from the General Treasurer Diosa, from Martha Wolford, President and CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield, Roger Bejan, we all know. We also have John Hernandez from Lifespan, and another one from Mary. And I know you'll have somebody speaking here in a minute, so we're quite the selection, offering of letters of recommendation. And as you talk about the areas for investment, I think there's a plethora of them. Somebody said, how many is a plethora? Well, put whatever number you want to it, but there's many, whether it's in the area of cancer research, all the kinds of things that can happen, that need to happen, potentially can come from this and the ability to go forward. So 2 specific questions. So let me thank you again for saying yes. Obviously, you've thought about this for a little bit since it was discussed that you might be this person and the governor nominating you for this advice and consent. You've been in business a long time. We're not going to say how old you are. We can guess based on how old you'll be when the first term is up here, and maybe you'll continue to again after. What do you see as a risk? If you had to say, what's one risk, given your extensive experience at the bank, at the university, and
I think, there's probably a couple. One of the risks is that we don't move fast enough. I mean, one of the roles that I see playing that I can bring to the table is not a technical one, it's expediter. It takes too long to do things in Rhode Island. It just takes too long. And, we can watch the train go by, we can take a tour of Worcester if you want, but it's time for us to put the flag in and actually get it done. So I think, waiting too long to get going and to jumpstart some of this stuff, there's always risk in investments. So this is a sector, this is an industry, as you know, where from a venture capital point of view, you make 10 investments in new technologies and maybe one of them works. So it could be that we invest X number of dollars and hopefully, you get an Amgen or a Google or something, but more likely you have to experiment and you may see things that don't work. Otherwise, I don't see a lot of downside other than I think people getting going, and the other side is being patient. That's the two sides of the coin. Is it's going to take us a while to get it going. So I think the bill calls for us coming back to the legislature in October this year. We're not going to have a lot to say other than organizationally in October. We're not going to, unless we get extremely lucky, which we might. But it's going to take time to see this investment germinate. It's going to take everybody, every time you go somewhere and you hear about a company or you run into somebody or a neighbor that's going to Boston to work in this sector, talk to them about Rhode Island. I joke that one of the ways that we can build this is I'm going to go take the train a few times to Boston in the morning and just walk up and down the aisles and talk to people who are going to life sciences companies up there and try and get them back down here.
The follow-up on the role that you're going to have, but I do want to welcome the Majority Leader here and the Minority Whip. Thanks for being here. Winningly, we're certain to include in Article 7, which was the budget piece that formed this, was the piece you talked earlier about how can we potentially enter into some venture agreements. I think Connecticut has done some of this. So how do we create some ROI, right? Return on investment that we can then plow back in, because we're using $45 million of state money. It's federal money, but it's the state to use moving forward on this.
Right.
How can we create that continuing source of investment that's needed?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that? Because I think that's something the state hasn't done.
Yeah, no, and that's where I said, it goes with the risk too. We'll form a fund. That fund can give grants. So grants can be very valuable. They're not dilutive when you invest in the company and you don't worry about getting it back. On the other hand, somebody mentioned to me, and I don't know if this has merit, but we'll explore it, co-investing with other venture capital investments. So somebody has a company and an outside venture capital firm is putting in $1 million, and we maybe put in $250,000 side by side, leverage the expertise of those venture firms. We have the Slater funds that you hopefully are aware of. Yep. Slater's making investments in this sector. Maybe we partner with them. I don't know if we'll have the expertise to do a high-powered venture firm, not at this size. Right. I'd like to mitigate it with getting some private money, get some of the companies in the state, I won't name them, companies and universities, to put money into that, but to generate something over time where it's a source of income. There's no doubt that up front it's not going to be a source of income. It's going to be a source of investment and expense. We need an incubator that has wet labs. It costs money to build it. It costs money to run it. We would do that as a joint venture, either with a real estate developer that's putting up one of the buildings, or with a university, or with private industry investors to do that.
One comment.
But it is designed as a quasi-public, to your point, right, long-term to be self-sustaining.
One other point, and then I'm going to go over any other questions from the senators or new senators that are here. You brought up the thing about running into some roadblocks issues, and knowing your background, knowing what you've done, you're not the person that's going to sit there and say, well, I can't do that, so I'll wait till somebody fixes something for me. If there's something where we can help, I'm sure you know where we live. Yep. You know where the building is. You've been here before. Tell us. Yeah. We want this to be successful beyond belief.
Yeah,
right?
No, thank you. This will sound like a pontificating, but there are can-do people and can't-do people. There are departments in this state that are can't-do, and there are some that can do. We need to mobilize all the can-do. This is a can-do effort. How can we do this? What do we need to do this? And I'll be the first one to ask if we see roadblocks or we see barriers. Some you can overcome, some you can't. It's not as simple as just more money, although it doesn't hurt. I've already talked to Senators Reid and Whitehouse about potentially down the road, where is there other funding availability on this. Again, the universities attract a lot of research dollars, which is great, helps overall build the industry. But I will not hesitate to ask and appreciate that offer.
Please. Thank you. Senator Fulek.
Yeah, just a follow-up on my previous questioning. And one of the things that makes this very unique is the idea that we're a quasi-public organization, which should be able to allow you to move quicker than government. You know, everybody looks at government, and government by its own nature is a deliberate body, and so it moves a lot slower and a lot more deliberate than a quasi could potentially do. And obviously, you want to, you know, get your feet on the ground and get moving on this particular project. In terms of your committee, you have outstanding qualified professionals that will assist you, obviously, in the direction that the state or your quasi is going to move. But one of the things that I want to ask is relative to what type of relationship or role do you see with Rhode Island Commerce?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we did a lot of work on this. One of the ways I got involved was I was at the foundation. We worked for about 2 years on this stuff before it was presented to the Senate President, the Speaker, and the Governor. And a lot of this is modeled after the Mass Life Science Center. That's where the idea for a quasi came. That's a lot of the modeling if you look at structure. We obviously don't have their size and capability, but the structure of it. You know, your description was great. It is not designed to get around government. It is designed to be more nimble and to be more flexible than doing that. And there were very serious deliberations when this was being done about where it winds up. Many people felt very strongly that it needs to be quasi to have that ability. But clearly we're hand in glove with Commerce. So for example, the Secretary of Commerce is by definition the vice chair of this group. The incentives are there. I hope to work a little more quickly and nimbly than sometimes I have seen in some state agencies without getting into detail. But if we're sitting here talking to a company and we need real jobs credits, and we need Rebuild Rhode Island credits, that's where they sit, in Commerce. And so we will be working hand in glove with them. In fact, prior to my getting this confirmation, everything we've done has been through Commerce. So working with the Pandemic Recovery Office and doing RFPs that we have out now for the search firm and a law firm, et cetera, I've done with Commerce. So it is designed for us to be independent, but work collaboratively.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions, comments from the senators? Neil, thank you.
Thank you.
If not, we're going to bring up a person one of the witnesses, Mukesh Jain. Yeah, if I said that right, from Brown University. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chairman DePalma. Pleasure to be with you and the rest of the Senate Finance Committee. My name is Mukesh Jain. I'm the Dean of Medicine and Biological Sciences at Brown and Senior Vice President for Health Affairs, and really a pleasure and privilege to be here to support Neil's candidacy as Chair of Board of the Life Sciences Hub. And I think much of what I was going to say has been articulated, so I'll be very brief. He fits very well the criteria that were laid out in the Hub Act: extensive experience in banking, fundraising for Brown, including the crowning achievement of the naming of the medical school, and grants for many years through the Rhode Island Foundation for diverse efforts, including education, as was brought up earlier. He's been part of this life sciences dialogue since its inception. It predates me, but it was very enjoyable to meet Neil when I first moved here about 2 years ago and became aware of the foundation's effort at the time under his leadership. And so he's been really deeply engaged in this effort from its inception. And third, while he downplays his knowledge of science, he's become quite a student of science, at least in the period that I've known him, and also has been I think at this point, very knowledgeable about all the exciting things that are happening in our community that I also think speak to risk mitigation, the integration of research between Brown and Care New England Lifespan that many of you have heard of, new research space, be it through efforts that Brown University is doing, but also the Rhode Island Department of Health. And transformative research programs, be they in cancer and brain science, or one of my favorites in the RNA space. So I think for all those reasons, He's an ideally suited candidate. It's an incredibly consequential moment, and it is a moment to steal a comment that was just made for individuals that are can-doers. And as all of you know, Neil is a can-doer. The investment by the state is important, it's significant, and you need a chairperson who's wise, who's deeply committed to the community, and is going to make sure that there is the requisite impact that we all seek, and I think he's going to be very committed to doing that. So for all those reasons, I'm really very pleased to be here to support his nomination.
Mukesh, thank you very much. Questions for this witness? Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion for the advice and consent of Neil Steinberg as the chair of the Life Science Hub of Rhode Island for a term expiring January 1st, 2028.
Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Cano, Senator Murray, Senator Paolino, Senator Sosnowski, Senator Zurier, Senator Brito, Senator Lawson, Leader Pearson, and Senator Senator Costa. You don't forget. I'm looking at the vest, sorry. I was like, wow. It even has his name in case we forget. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion will move to the floor with advice and consent of Neil Steinberg as the chair of the Life Science Hub of Rhode Island for a term expiring January 1st, 2028.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.